You know, Amanda, we're at that time of the year again where people start bringing out their motorcycles.
Yes.
And, you know, there are so many people that love to ride here on Long Island. But motorcycles do bring some unique issues, and we've talked about them on the show. I think it's really important now that we go back over them. And one of the things that we've talked about is the issue with regard to first insurance.
Yes, very important.
So, Amanda, what kind of insurance is important for someone on a motorcycle to have, and why is that?
Yeah, so you obviously want to have the most amount of coverage that you can on a motorcycle because unfortunately in New York State, there is no fault for motorcycle riders.
And what that means, folks, is that if you're in any other type of vehicle typically, and you are either a passenger or you're a driver of that vehicle, what will happen is up to a minimum of $50,000, you would have medical benefits and lost wages. And the problem is they don't cover motorcycles for that.
Right.
For no fault. So if you're on a motorcycle and you happen to be involved in an accident, which oftentimes, unfortunately, is catastrophic.
Correct.
Or the injuries are a lot worse because you don't have metal around you. You don't have the car around you to protect you.
Right.
And so what happens is people will be involved in these accidents. They will not have no fault because no fault doesn't cover. And now the question is how are they going to get their medical bills paid?
Right.
How are they going to get paid to work? If that fact that they can't work. And in addition to that, how are they going to recover for those injuries?
Right.
And so one of the things that we've talked about on the show here is that it's critical that you get the most liability coverage that you can get on the motorcycle. And that means liability covers you if you cause injury to somebody else. However, if you have, let's say, a $250,000 or $300,000 liability policy, then you're eligible to have the same amount of uninsured or underinsured coverage on your vehicle,
right,
and or on your motorcycle. And the critical part about that is, let's say there's a vehicle, let's say there's a car, Amanda, and they have $25,000, which is the minimum amount of insurance, and they cause the accident, someone gets terribly hurt on a motorcycle. If you have just $25,000 of the minimum motorcycle liability coverage, what does that mean?
You have no additional coverage for your injuries.
Right. So you're not going to be able to recover it in addition. If, however, you had, let's say, a $300,000 motorcycle policy for liability, you'd then be eligible to have what?
A $300,000 policy underinsured.
Right. And then what would happen is if you can you get the recovery from the other vehicle, the vehicle that caused the accident for $25,000, you at least, even though you don't have no fault coverage for your medicals and your lost wages, would be able to presumably go after an additional $275,000 in coverage. And so there's at least available coverage.
Right.
And so we've emphasized this on the show. We're asking all of our friends out there who ride motorcycles, please listen to us. Okay, we don't get paid by having people go buy insurance, okay?
Right.
We're not telling you to go to a particular insurance carrier. We're not telling you that there's some reason that we want you to do it other than we really want you to be protected.
Yeah, we see too many cases where someone has a small policy and unfortunately the injuries are greater than that policy, and sometimes there's no recovery.
It's catastrophic. I mean, I've had injuries where the case could be worth several hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the person is in an accident with another driver. The other driver has a minimum $25,000 policy, and the person who had the motorcycle, what happened is they had someone solicit them, one of these insurance carriers, and we've seen their commercials, and they tell you, well, you can get in there for really, really cheap.
Right.
Well, the problem is you're being cheap but not smart.
Right.
Okay? And it's not your fault, because what they're not telling you is that when you're on that motorcycle, they don't tell you, by the way, hey, by the way, this is different from a car where you're not going to be able to get your medical benefits paid and your lost wages paid under the no fault. You're not going to have that $50,000 in coverage.
Right.
The insurance companies don't tell you that. So what they do is they sort of bring you in. They bring you in and they're like, well, look, it's going to be so cheap to have coverage on this motorcycle. Well, of course it's going to be cheap, because what damage are you likely to cause to somebody else?
Right.
Almost none.
Right.
And so now you bought a policy. It's really not doing you any good. It's not protecting you. And you come to our office at that point and you say, well, I have these terrible injuries, and what am I going to do about my medical? And we say, well, hopefully you have medical insurance. Now, oftentimes you might not.
Right.
Or if you don't, then we have to look to see, do you have the issue of being able to get Medicaid, getting under the Affordable Care Act. But the problem is that's actually lienable. So whatever medicals go through that have to get reimbursed to the Medicaid and the carrier.